Welcome to the Expat Experience, your essential guide to relocating, living, and thriving in San Carlos, Mexico. Join seasoned real estate professional Robert DeForge as he pulls back the curtain on seamlessly transitioning from dreamer to doer. Whether you're eyeing retirement bliss, seeking the perfect work from anywhere setup, or hunting for your ideal vacation escape, this podcast is your compass to navigating the exciting journey to San Carlos, Mexico living. Get ready to turn your relocation dreams into sun-soaked reality.
Good morning, Tammi. Thanks for joining me.
Good morning.
So a question I hear a lot of times from people, they ask me, well, Mexico is a big country. What made you choose San Carlos? Why San Carlos? And maybe you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, I'm going to start with for me, obviously it's different. Everybody has their own story. My father came here, retired early he was living in New Mexico, and he did a lot of traveling. And he went to Costa Rica, he went to Rocky Point, he went to Quino Bay, and I think he even went to Ecuador, a couple other places, because some of those Latin areas were really popular at the time, and even now, for expats going to find some retirement in Mexico or in a Latin country. And the reason he came to San Carlos was because of the proximity. Because it's drivable. You can drive 4 hours to the United States. You can get to the border for whatever reason. There's some security in that, being able to drive yourself somewhere if you couldn't fly. At the time when he got here, there were flights coming into Guaymas. So it was just about driving and getting here. So that was for him. And for me personally, I liked Latin America. I mean, I like Mexico. I've been coming here a lot, and my daughter was only 10 years old at the time. And so I thought it would be a great opportunity for her to learn a culture and the language. But, it's obviously grown since then. I mean, it's grown. My love for San Carlos has grown even more than before. So what brought you to San Carlos?
I spent 5 years living in Latin America, and I've been traveling to Mexico for 35 years plus. So I've watched it grow and change a lot. I found San Carlos to be very unique in that the mountainous terrain that stops right at the ocean, I haven't found that anywhere else. I've been, all over the Yucatan, down the coast here, on the west side of Mexico. But this is a very unique spot to me. It's the topography, just the feel of it, the way it looks is entirely different. And of course, some of the other places in Mexico are very developed at this point in time. They've had all these years to grow and become sort of a different energy, a different vibe, more of strictly a tourist destination. And I do really like the fact that we have the capital of the state of Sonora right up the road here, so you can access some things if they're not available here locally. And then we have Guaymas right down the road here, 10, 15 miles away. And I'm not sure quite of the population. I think it's maybe around 300,000, something like that, 250,000. So it's not a huge city, but it's decent size, and there's things available over there. So I think that, and then the fact that my wife had never lived in another country, and, knowing that we could jump in the car and be at the border in 4 hours, that was a big bonus. And I think that appeals to a lot of people that decide to make the move, versus picking up and going to like San Miguel or, someplace like that where you definitely have to get on an airplane. It's going to be a long, long trip. So those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think when I get people that come here, because I came here in 2006, so 18 years ago. When I get people that stop in and I ask them basically, what do you like to do? What are your hobbies? What are your passions? Because San Carlos has a little bit of everything. The proximity to the United States is great. I mean, that's just the security. So if you're basically talking about a person's primal needs, right? We need shelter, security, food. So we talk about those things. That's why the proximity is great. It's like you check in a box. The healthcare is now something that was always kind of an issue. It was always a concern. My father was a big advocate for the medical care that he got in Hermosillo. He was very happy with it, and I've known a lot of people that have done that through the hospital of SEMA, which is it's a well-known hospital, has great doctors that have been studied in the United States and other places. And then there's another hospital called San Jose. So that was like one of the things that did kind of give like a yellow flag, because your hospital was an hour and a half away. But I come from a small town, so a hospital an hour and a half away just did seem like a lot. But now we have a new hospital that is going to be here in San Carlos, so that checks another box. But I think what is the best part about San Carlos is the passion that you get when you're here. And so I don't really those are, you have to have those things. They're required. The cost of living, that's another thing. It's about, I think, at least 1/3 of what the United States cost of living. You can go through that. There's a lot of information about that. But the passion that I feel you can get here is something I don't know. I can't really understand what's so unique about the fact that we are so many people from different places. So I'm from New Mexico originally. There's a lot of people from all over the states, all over the world. And you get here in a foreign country. You may not speak the language, which you don't really have to in San Carlos, but things come up. Whatever's happening, you need to have a conversation with somebody that speaks in Spanish. You break your leg, something happens in your house and you need some help. But because we are all coming to this community from different places, somehow the barriers are down. I used to make an analogy of, if you ever been on a cruise ship and somehow you're everybody's best friend on a cruise ship because you just met them. You're like, hey, you're my best friend. We're going to go out with this guy that I just barely met. Like, that is San Carlos every day. If you don't find a friend in San Carlos, geography is not your problem. It's not geography. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I agree. 100%.
Yeah. They have, and it's whatever your passion is for. Like, if you want to give back to a community, pick your poison. There's the, CRIPS, which is for the sea turtles, that they're always protecting the sea turtles. There's SBPA, that's for the animals. Castaway Kids, there's a lot of community outreach. If church is your passion, there are some great churches that do a lot of outreach programs. If you're a scuba diver, scuba diving is amazing here. Fishing, hiking, there's kayak clubs, hiking clubs, basically, and cards. My mom plays hand and foot. Don't ask me what that is. I just know there's a bunch of cards. I don't even they're just like, they have to have like actual apparatus to hold the cards. I don't know what that is. Bridge clubs, anything you want to do. Club. That's what I like it.
And we have a yacht club. And we also have Rotary for people who are involved in Rotary in the States. And I know I was very involved before I left the East Coast and came west. Well, thank you. Those are some good insights. I'd like to do what I call Mythbusters. And so a lot of people who don't have the experience that we have with Mexico, they'll ask me, Mexico's dangerous. Is Mexico dangerous? What do you feel about that?
I always also caveat this with, I don't really feel that. I would never grew up with a key to my front door of my house. So I grew up in a small town, but I lived in St. Louis before I came here. And the year before I came here, St. Louis was voted one of the most dangerous cities in the United States. And I was a single mom and my daughter had to walk home from school. And let me tell you, there was some major fear with that. My daughter was 10 when I moved here and I raised her here. She went to YMS for school and I never had a concern with her. And as far as I've never had, or anybody in my sphere has ever had a bad experience. And I've been here 18 years. I think I had my bike. I had a bike stolen off my back porch once in 18 years. You know what I mean? And that's not something that is unique to San Carlos. It's not unique anywhere. So for me, the danger is really if you're in that environment, right? If you're in the environment of, different trafficking. I am not in that environment. I don't even know. I've raised my daughter. I have stepchildren now, and I don't know any of them. They're not close to drugs. You know what I mean? And I have family members. So to me, honestly, coming from St. Louis and my family's in Los Angeles and I have family in Phoenix, hands down, just my real life experience, it's much safer here than, especially in San Carlos. We are definitely a bubble. Like, you can walk down your street and in the middle of the night and not really have any concern at all. For me, I got stranded on the side of the road coming down from Hermosillo. From the States, I had a trailer. It was a long story, but I ended up having to sleep on the side of the road in my car with my daughter, waiting to get a tow truck to get me to come by, as they have tow trucks that they come and get you, and waiting for a tire store to open so that I could buy a new tire for my vehicle. And everything was, it was just a great story. Even the police officers were so helpful. So, I would say stay away from the bad, stay away from, doing those kind of things, and you'll probably be pretty safe.
Thank you. Yeah, I feel the same way. And I grew up in big cities. And so I always had that situational awareness. And I will admit, when I first got down here, because it's a new country and I wasn't totally familiar, but once I integrated and made some Mexican friends and started to understand that it's really no different than Canada or the United States. If you're in a big city, you need to be more cautious, which neighborhoods you wander into, and that kind of thing. But I've never had any issues. And I think the opposite of that is that I found the Mexican people to go out of their way to be helpful and to show that level of compassion that I definitely didn't encounter in the big cities that I lived in. It kind of reminded me a little bit of some of the places I lived in the Deep South, where people were concerned for their neighbor and willing to go out of their way. And a friend of mine retired. He was the president of a company up in New Mexico, and he retired here not too long ago. And they were up in Hermosillo at the Costco, and his car just decided to quit. And some man came over with his family, and they got his car to the man's house, and he called a mechanic, and he fed my friend and his family. He said he was there for 5 hours at the man's house, and he didn't know him. He just met him in the Costco parking lot. And that kind of thing, that's one of the reasons that I chose to come down here, is that sort of, level of humanness that I was missing. So
yeah, you get the real feeling like we're in it together, and
right.
It being life, we're in it together.
Yeah.
So.
Well, continuing with my Mythbuster questions, I've had people ask me, they've been concerned about owning a piece of real estate here and having it, I guess the word would be confiscated or taken away by the government. That's come up on some of my trips with friends that are still living in the States and Canada. And maybe you could address that, true or false.
That absolutely false, completely false. And I'll try to bridge the subject of ownership in Mexico as a foreigner. If you're a foreigner anywhere in Mexico, you have to own. You have to apply for permits. It's actually in Mexico City. It's foreign affairs permit. And basically, it's not like if you're wanted by Interpol, if you're basically running from the law, you may not get this permit either way. Although I've known people running from the law that were later extradited, and they were able to get their permits. I don't know how hard it would be, but anyway, there's permit that you have to have everywhere. But specifically in the zones where we're 50 kilometers from the water or 100 kilometers from any border, you have to have a bank trust. And that bank trust is a very solid, legal instrument. It's the same as very similar to the United States. I know a lot of people own properties in trust. I grew up on a ranch, and we had lots of land that were all held in trust. And that's essentially what this is. But the way they've done this, because the Constitution, I won't go into the whole thing, but basically that's the way that they get around having foreigners own property in those areas. Because a long time ago, there were foreign countries like France and Mexico has been invaded a few times. Actually, they were conquered, as you know, they were invaded by Europeans. So this was a native indigenous population here, but there were other countries that were coming in buying up the land, and so they could protect their borders essentially. So this bank trust, it works similar to the United States. The title of the property is held by the bank, and there are specific banks that have a lot of requirements and a lot of restrictions, and they're highly governed. And that bank holds that title, and then you are the only beneficiary. And this is also nothing unlike the United States. If you have a bank account, your bank account is actually the owner of that bank account is the bank, but you are the only beneficiary to what is inside that account. I mean, this is literally just like apples to apples. So, can a bank take your money? No, they can't, because there's a contract that you sign, and it's the same with bank trust. And as far as taking land from foreigners, it just simply does not happen. It doesn't happen because they can't legally do it. And apart from that, would be like an international scandal if that were something that was happening. Now, I'm not going to say that creepy things don't happen, but it's not because the laws aren't set up to protect you. It's because you may have gotten involved in somebody that is, kind of a creepy real estate people, which is probably more important than anything that I can tell you is do not leave your brain at the border. That happens so often. In the United States, if you were going to buy a piece of property, would you put it in your neighbor's name? That's insane. I had a guy said, "Hey, I love my gardener and I don't want to do the bank trust because it's super safe, but it costs about $3,000 to set one up and about $500 a year. But you can pass it on seamlessly to your heirs, which you designate in the trust." This guy came in, he's like, "I don't know if I want to do the trust anymore. It's $500 a year." I mean, your property taxes are less than $500 a year, and that's $500 a year. Like $1,000 a year to own a piece of property is, I don't think for fixed costs is that horrible. Anyway, his gardener was with me, and I literally was his gardener. And I said, I all respect to you, Juan, that I think you're probably a great guy. But I said to my client, do you know his family? Do you know his friends? Do you know his cousins? Because if this guy dies, you need to fight his entire family for your property. And I've seen it happen. So the safety in Mexico as the titling process is so strong and so secure. The safety of somebody's bad decisions is another story, Yeah,
I don't see any difference between that and having a transaction in the United States. From my financial advising background, and people used to always want to appoint some random person as the trustee of their trust. And I said, and I would always advise them, listen, this is a very important decision, and don't take it so lightly. It doesn't have to be a friend or family. It can be someone else who's, in more of a capacity to handle something like that. So, I don't, all in all, I don't see a whole lot of differences when it comes down to, making good decisions, things along that line. It doesn't matter where you are, what country.
I had a comment to somebody recently because they're like, "Oh, I found another real estate agent to work with." I said, "That's absolutely wonderful." And I support, there are some amazing, great, honest, ethical, real estate agents in all of Mexico. Definitely here. We're, an association called AMPI, Asociación Mexicana Profesionales Inmobiliarios. It's basically like NAR in the United States. In fact, we are honorary members of NAR by being members of AMPI. And I said, just make sure you're getting the right person and check for references, because just you can get involved in some situations where someone is not taking your best interest as a priority. And so that's just something. If you feel a yellow flag or a red flag or something that just doesn't feel right, this is a major investment, it shouldn't be, it's not like you're buying tortillas at the grocery store. Ask around, get advice, ask the guy at the bar, ask the guy at the restaurant, they're going to tell you, you're going to get, if you ask 5 people and 2 of them give you some bad news, I think you should take that into consideration.
Well, one of the things, I mentioned this to you before, one of the things that impressed me when we first spoke before I joined the VIVE organization was that there is a notario or attorney on staff. And that's not something that I found with other real estate organizations here in San Carlos. And I felt that to be extremely important in the fact that the setting up these trusts and all these details are so incredibly important that it's done right. And I think that that's a big benefit for people who are looking to make a purchase or even to rent here in San Carlos, that VIVE is set itself apart by going ahead and taking the step and doing that and making sure that we have good legal counsel in-house. And so that working relationship is very close. And anyway, so we do a good job with that.
That's literally our biggest, that's our pride. And that's something that you don't even see. And that's literally our pride. It's like having a good roof. Like it needs to be a checkbox. But as soon as you don't have a good roof, you know it when it's raining, and I can just say that 100% that our roof and our plumbing and our electricity and our services, are amazing. But sometimes, you look for the shiny thing, but it doesn't work. So be careful about that. That's all. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate you coming on today and taking the time to do this. And we'll see you again soon.
We appreciate you joining us. Visit expatexperiencepodcast.com for more practical tips and insights on making your move to paradise. We're here to help navigate the process of relocating to San Carlos every step of the way. Start your journey toward living the dream in Mexico.